Howdy and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Today we're going to be looking at a very unusual aircraft and somewhat rare maker. This is the Grumman XP-50 from Entex. This is a 1972 issue of a kit that was originally issued in 1963 by Midori. It's in 1/55th scale, very odd scale, and it's kit number 8449. And so the XP-50 is a plane that many of you may not know about or heard about. Maybe it looks a little familiar because it's an offshoot from Grumman's failed XF-5F, which was a interceptor that was being designed for, or had been designed for the U.S. Navy, but didn't go into production. Even though it was a pretty spectacular aircraft from all accounts, Navy decided to stick with single-engine fighters at the time. And so the Army Air Corps had seen what Grumman was doing with that and was interested in looking at a follow-up to the P-38 that was just being ordered in 1939. And they wanted to start thinking about what's next. Aircraft development was at a high rate at that time, so they were hedging their bets on, all right, the P-38 is not going to be top-notch for very long, so let's start looking at the next replacement for it. So they asked Grumman to make a version of the XF-5F for them. It received the Grumman design number of 34, and was later coded as the G41. So the Air Corps ordered the first prototype on 25 November of 1939, and it was basically just a modification of the X5F with a lengthened nose in order to be able to accommodate tricycle landing gear. It had armament was going to be all on the nose, which was going to be two 20mm cannons and two 50 calibers. The Air Corps also stipulated that they wanted self-sealing fuel tanks and some armor on it, which the X5F did not have. Still used the same Wright 1820 engines of 1,200 horsepower, but they were turbo supercharged because the Air Corps was interested in high altitude intercepting, whereas the Navy was more interested in low to medium altitude. So the engines were handed, so you had props turning in opposite direction, which helped eliminate the torque on these higher powered fighters. So the first flight ended up being on 18 February 1941. The aircraft was lost shortly after on 14 May 1941 due to a turbo supercharger explosion, which caused a fire. And the test pilot, Robert Hall, ended up bailing out, and the aircraft went into the bay. So the Air Corps was sufficiently impressed with what they had seen with it that they ordered a follow-up that Grumman was working on, was the G51, which the Air Corps then ordered two prototypes as replacements for the XP-50. They called those the XP-65. Initially, it was going to be with the same engines, but they were then soon swapped out for R2600s, and ultimately they ended up being R2800s used on it. The Navy became interested again in this new version, and so they were working on developing a combined aircraft for both Army and Navy, but the Navy equipment that was needed on it, started making the aircraft too heavy for what the Air Corps wanted, so the Air Corps eventually canceled the XP-65 contract, but Grumman continued to develop the aircraft, which eventually became the F-7F Tiger Cat. So that's a little history on it. Entex as a company, you may not be very familiar with them. They were a short-lived company from early 70s, looks like either 69 or 70s when they started, and stopped producing kits by 1981. The vast majority of their kits were imported from Japan from all sorts of companies. So, pretty much any company in Japan that made a kit, Entex imported something from them. They imported not just aircraft, but also cars, race cars, boats, you name it, Entex imported them. Entex was more known for being a toy manufacturer. They produced a competitor to Lego, something called Mega Block, I think it was. They were also one of the very first companies to start really getting into electronic games, and they made a Pong game. And ultimately, that's what kind of put a big hurt on the model kit industry. Was the emerging business of video games, electronic games. Kids wanted to play that instead of spending the time building models. So Entex didn't last very long by 1981. They were out of business. ScaleMate shows that they produced or had 312 kits in their lineup throughout those years from 69, 70 to 81. Only a couple of them appear to be their own molds that were produced. It looks like they may have made a C5 Galaxy and the Hughes H4 Spruce Goose or Hercules, and that everything else was a rebox of somebody else's stuff. Again, mainly Japanese. There was a couple of Renwalls in there, but the majority of it was Japanese. So Max over at Max's Models got a pretty good video on the history of Entex, so I'll put a link in the description for that. And also Ed Nash has got a pretty good video on the XP-50 as well, so I'll include a link in that so you can see a little bit more history on the XP-50. So that being said, let's take a look at the kit itself. So we've got typical of almost all of Entex's kits, which were white boxes with just a photograph of an assembled model. A little bit of information, 1/55th scale, excellent detail, which I think that's a stretch. 47 pieces, including the decals, easy to assemble. Yeah, that part's probably true. And a wingspan of 9.5 inches. This 1/55th scale is a really odd choice, but again, this came from a 60s Japanese kit when they were making stuff in all sorts of scales. But as you can see here, if you get Entex, it has lots of fun from Entex. Package was designed by a group called Group X. Sides got repetition of most of that information. Same thing with this other side. Bottom of the box is blank. And the end has got repetition of the information. It's got the kit number of 8449GA. And this side, got a little crushed and retaped. It had the company name or address down here. So these were glued closed boxes. So it's a side opener, but it was glued closed, so this person cut it open to get it. And here we have our instruction sheet. So instructions are pretty simple. It's a one sheet, pretty thin paper. It says that the instructions were painted in Japan, so it has that kind of Japanese paper feel that we see on some of the other Japanese kits. And there's not much to it. We've got a full exploded view of the kit. And then on the side here, we've got parts number call out for the individual parts, not broken up by sprue, but none of the parts themselves or the trees have numbers on them, so that's about the only way to figure out where you're getting it. It appears that whoever had this kit before was looking at maybe using this as the basis for creating an F5F, because they're talking about shortening the nose, moving the landing gear up here, to adding a tail wheel. So it looks like they were going to try to do something with this in that respect. You got some simple assembly instructions down below. And that's about it. Nothing on the back side. No, hey, here's the other kits made by Entex, nothing else. So pretty simple. So here are the decals that come with it. Incorrect for pre-war Air Corps aircraft, which should just be the star with the red dot in the middle. These red striped bars are post-World War II. And if you notice, it says P38 on here, so I wouldn't be surprised if these decals were used or reused from a different kit. So there you have that. They haven't yellowed, surprisingly. Well, a little bit of yellowing, but kind of useless because there's nothing even remotely close to what the actual aircraft had. So we had a stapled closed bag that the parts come in. Yeah, we'll start with this one here. So everything's still on the sprues, surprisingly, even being in a bagged thing like this. And as you can see, it's molded in this almost turquoise color plastic, which is very different. Very large, thick sprues, but the parts are all well attached to the sprues. As you can see, we've got raised panel lines with rivet detailing. We've got some flash going on here. So you're just kind of getting the impression for the aircraft. There's your engine nacelles, which are pretty small for what this aircraft should have had, with zero detailing for the engines. Our wing has engraved lines for the ailerons. We got, again, the raised panel lines with the rivet rows. And the bottom half of the wing has absolutely nothing. And so, kind of interesting that they would do the detailing on the top, but not the bottom. So there's that one. There's nothing on the inside. Here we have our other wings. Again, bottom half has nothing, top half similar. Here's our tail, which has engraved or raised line for the elevator. A little bit more flash on this. This bottom part of the fuselage, center part of the wing, has no detailing whatsoever. There's nothing on the inside. And then the top side of the horizontal stabilizer does have raised panel lines, and it has an engraved line for the elevators. Here's our other side of the fuselage. Got indentation for the guns, single cannon, I think, in the middle, and then you're supposed to stick guns in these slots here, so that's not very accurate either. We've got the engine nacelles, the bottom of them, nothing there really. And these are probably the top sides of the inner part of the wings, and then you've got your vertical stabilizers, which have same thing, raised lines with the rivets, engraved rudders. But on the inside of those vertical stabilizers, you've got absolutely nothing. And again, nothing on the inside. Then we do have a separate sprue of black parts. So you've got some propellers that are very odd looking, very small. I guess that fits the size of the engine nacelles. You've got these really crude bombs to stick on. There's something representing a gear door for each side. You get your wheels, which are very, very simple. And landing gears, just basically sticks. And there's your Mr. Pilot. He's kind of leaning back like a Formula One racer. Just kind of a sphere stuck on some shoulders. And I think these are the guns here. I think this is for mounting the propellers. So that's it. Oh, wait, forgot canopy. Canopy, there you go. Relatively, it's pretty wavy. I don't know if you can see how well you can see that, but it's got waves all around it. Got ejector pin mark right in the middle of it. And the framing is all on the inside. So it'll make it a little hard to paint that framing if you wanted to. So that's it, a fairly simple kit. Not the most accurate kit, seems to have a lot of flaws. But this was the only kit for making an XP-50 forever. I think there's a couple of them have come out recently. There's some of the smaller manufacturers. And as you can see, there was nothing available for XF5Fs either, which is why this person was trying to convert this, it looks like. So that's your fun Entex XP-50. So as I mentioned before, this was originally produced by Midori in 1963. Odaka or ODK ended up taking over the mold. They produced a new kit in 1960, or a new boxing of it in 1966. Another new boxing in 68, and another new boxing sometime in the 60s as well. The boxes for all those early Japanese kits are quite spectacular looking. Lots of color and action, you know, in typical Japanese style of box art. So definitely wait till the end to take a look at those because they're pretty impressive. Then you got this 72 issue from Entex, and then Odaka did another issue sometime in the 70s with yet another, different box and different artwork representing the aircraft, and it's just really doesn't even look anywhere close. As much as this is off from the actual XP-50, that drawing's even further off from the model. It looks, like just a made-up airplane, basically. But it does have two engines, so that was how they wanted to market that kit in the 70s. And so that's about it. If you built one of these, tell us about it, or some of these other Entex kits. I think they run the range of gambit from, really not too bad kits to this. But, like I said earlier, if you wanted to build an XP-50, this was about it for forever, up until just recently. So with a lot of extra work on it, maybe you could make something out of this. But kind of a unique glimpse into 60s Japanese model making. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.